So let me introduce to you Jake Wise and Kane Cooper, both of whom are exhibiting in Juicy, a Pride exhibition, which has been running all of the Pride season and closes this evening. You're both photographers, so there's probably a lot of things you have in common and can speak about, which makes my job a little bit easier. I'm also a visual artist. My name's Wade Goring, by the way, and I am the founder and project manager of Group Art Show Sydney, or GAS-SYD for short, and also a practicing visual artist with works over in the corner, over there next to Kane's. So I'm real and authentic and can talk about this stuff too. What I wanted to say too, and I know that, Jake, you've been away for a lot of Pride this season, but at the same time, it's been a really positive focus on the LGBTQIA plus community, like a real, as opposed to sort of like the yes vote several years ago where it was sort of a debate. This is more like, a celebration of our lives and the lives of the community. How has that affected both of you? And I'm going to sort of put the microphone in front of you awkwardly. So Jake, we'll start with you.
I think it's interesting. It's twofold. Like, one, it brings out all the joy and all the love, and everyone's supportive, and people messaging me fun things, even though, as you said, I was away for most of it. And I think for young people, seeing rainbow flags everywhere and celebration and support is a good thing. I also think it brings out the tokenistic side of businesses and like people making money out of, like, for example, we were just in where was I the other day? I took a photo. We were down at Bondi the day of the big party yesterday, or 2 days ago, and there was a Pride-themed seltzer that was $3 more than the normal seltzer that they serve, but they donate $1, so they're making $2 more than the exact same flavored seltzer. And I was just like, so we're paying just to have a rainbow on the can that we're going to throw out anyway. And it kind of brings in notion of intention and what you're doing and what's, yeah.
And I wonder what Pride tastes like in a can.
Yeah, mango hard cider seltzer, right?
Sugar.
Yeah, sugar and regret.
I'll have the hard one.
Watermelon
They can
sugar
pick the rest.
Pride.
And Kane, what are your thoughts about the Pride season and how that's thought? And I'm going to actually hand you the microphone.
I like that there's a lot of things available to us. So if you weren't someone who likes to go to parties or circuit parties, you could go to an art exhibition and have a look at queer art. I've also liked, I'm a working professional but also a consumer in this season. But it's been nice to sort of spend some time with my friends while I've been working and doing all of this stuff, because it's your friends that are your biggest support, and doing stuff with them means that you get to celebrate this season with them. I also love that we've got an opportunity to bring more people from overseas, especially when Pride usually takes place June, July in the Northern Hemisphere summer. It's nice that we can still get a lot of people come in at during February, March, because we get lonely down here in Australia, in Sydney. So I love all the international tourists, and I just love the opportunity that Sydney World Pride has created for us here in the city.
Great. Well, that actually leads to my first question, actually, about the exhibition and about the art, which is what we're here to talk about, is that I was going to say, what are your thoughts on Pride art? And I thought, no, that's very general and a Richard Wilkins kind of question. So I was like, I thought about it in a different way. When either of you are exhibiting work in a LGBTIQI plus themed exhibition, do you ever feel that you need to pull back on that or sort of not highlight those themes? Is that something you've come across before? And therefore this highlights the opportunity to not do that. So what have you been experienced normally with exhibiting work?
So I think whenever I've exhibited work, I think it's always been my intention, and that's always been allowed. So I think innately my work will have an LGBTQ element. I think as a fine artist, so to speak, I think people can pick up on that no matter what, whether it is just the work I've shown here, which is very much a landscape work with just an element of something. I think the approach and the intention always has that. But when I've shown at art fairs, or I have a lot of work kind of available digitally, that very much the work that is selected or curated for that is very much the sexualless, like they just kind of remove anything to do with sexuality, they remove anything to do with people almost, and they like my approach to light and landscape, but they don't necessarily want to showcase that element. So I think having exhibitions like this are important to allow for more people to see that there isn't that much difference between what we're seeing on the walls here and what we're seeing in the walls at any other gallery or exhibition. And yeah, I mean, historically speaking, there's probably a crapload of LGBTQ artists that weren't out or weren't allowed to be out, or, you know, and because of that, I think it will slowly blur the lines where I can be at an art fair and showcase other stuff that won't necessarily be limited to a particular stigma or label.
Yeah, good. Yeah, very good answer.
I'm not usually worried about who may see it. I didn't really start my photography in order for people to see it. I kind of just wanted to do the photo shoot. I wanted to sort of see if that was something that I could get away with. While you're here, do you just want to sort of like take off your shirt? Or, you know, how do you feel about sort of taking off your pants and let's photograph that? And it was only through the resulting images that I thought, I'll post them on Instagram, and then it sort of like went from there to sort of, come into an exhibition kind of setting. So I actually really quite like watching people interact with queer art, and I love that this particular exhibition is queer artists, and the resulting artworks are all kind of the manifestation of what they originally started with up until now. I don't know if that really answers the question, but
no, it does. No,
I think it gives you something extra.
It does. It gives us all something to think about. And my 2 cents on that one is, yes, I think that, like, I will admit, I hold back exhibiting in other exhibitions, and I didn't so much hold back with a couple of pieces in this one. So to me, that it did provide a platform to put forward the more quote-unquote queer works, which I would pull back on, at times, because you're judging your audience. Ultimately, you want, you might want to sell something, and you do, like you were saying, Jay. You come to find out what sells and what doesn't, and even sometimes you think, you'll be at an art fair, and I'm watching the crowd, and I'm like, those two queens are going to buy something, and they don't, and then it's like a lovely, suburban lady who just goes, I really like that, and you actually, your opinions of your own work get broadened, so it changes all the time. With that though, I was thinking, but should queer art ever become mainstream? Like, will we ever see your pictures over there in Kmart, or should we see them in Kmart or IKEA as part of their permanent range? Is there something to sort of treasure about not being mainstream, about keeping it, a subculture, keeping it with like under the line? Like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, sort of holding it closer to ourselves.
I guess it depends on how you define queer art, because if the artist is queer, then wouldn't the art be queer, and therefore aren't we consuming that mainstream anyway? The amount of actors, directors, artists, filmmakers throughout history are queer, and even though the work might not be a penis or genitals or sexualized, it's still queer. So then aren't we seeing every fashion house in history then is queer art, right? So I think it is already mainstream. Will the quote-unquote queerness in art be mainstream? I think, again, thanks to pride and maybe corporate greed, that in itself will become, the rainbow flag is now a commodity that people...
And they call it
rainbow washing. Yeah, it's that whole thing. So, look, I think there also needs to be... I think censorship is interesting when it comes to it, because whilst we want queer art to be consumed, we also want it to be age appropriate. And so I don't think both of our work has had a lot of sexual imagery or nudity that I don't think is appropriate for children in Kmart. That being said, there were time and place, and I think that, I think there should be safe spaces for queer people throughout, that historically is important, and I think that same with queer art, but I also think it should be mainstream, so then like we're not having, Oscar winners breaking the mold that should have broken decades ago, and I think in order to become normalized, it needs to be mainstream across the board, and then we're not having comparisons of queer people versus non-queer people and queer art versus non-queer art. Yes. And that,
I do think there is work that you create for specific purposes. So if your intention is to exhibit, then it's fairly creatively free to sort of do whatever you want. But if you do know ahead of time that your brief is, hey, this is going to be in Spotlight, Jenny from the block is going to sort of pick it up and put it in her living room, then you create art for that reason. And it's the same putting your work on Instagram and putting little circles over Jim's generous contribution to the wall space here. There is, that is just the fact of the matter, and you just have to play by those rules. I think you can still be edgy or still be true to yourself and your queer art by, as you say, by very nature being queer yourself, you create what you want. I just don't think that you should have expectations that all work should be used for all things.
Yeah, definitely. That was a good catalytic question, I would call that. I'm going to skip a few things because you've already touched on what I want to talk about with the two of you, because there are similarities between your work in the sense that they both include nudes. And I wondered what the conversations are like with your subjects about their nudity. And I haven't seen all of your works, Jake, but do some of them involve full frontal nudity from time to time?
Mixture, I think, across. Conversations, they're usually really uncomfortable.
But that's the thing. I was like, what is the conversation you have with the subject, and when, and particularly, obviously, full frontal nudity is different to sort of the nudity we're seeing in your works at the moment. So, tell me about more of that. What's the conversation with the subject about nudity?
So this work actually does have frontal. It's just not in this collection. But I shot. It's very hard to shoot someone in nature and be like, just angle yourself in certain ways and make it uncomfortable. I think it's always different. Each person, so when I first moved I lived in New York City just after graduating from university, and I was in the closet and going through my queer journey, and it was my first time photographing men and nude men, and it was very interesting because the first lot of people that were interested in doing the work were sex workers or adult film star people, and their approach to nudity is very different to what my own approach to nudity was, and so that made for very fun, laughing moments where I was like, oh no, I'm not shooting porn, slow down, it's meant to be sensual and very vulnerable, and it was cheeks spread and that sort of thing. So I think everyone is different. I love, especially recently, and when people see my work and they want to do a photo shoot and they hire me to do their own private stuff that usually isn't seen publicly. The conversations are very about building trust, building chemistry, building a level of authenticity. So they're not doing it for Instagram. They're not doing it for OnlyFans. They're doing it just for their own self-expression and their own. And so I think it's every conversation I've had, this work is usually from a very far distance, as you can see. Yes. So I'm calling out no, step left, or turn to the right, or sometimes it's on my phone. I mean, this one. So this one here, it's shot near the centre of Australia, and it's at 5 a.m. in the morning, and I'm shooting it on a drone, and I'm really far away, and so I'm text messaging him my directions because we're that far away. Otherwise, I'd be in the photo. There's actually even wider shots where I'm hiding under bushes, so you can't see me. Whereas, and then this one here,
I love that.
So that's in Eora, which is just past Orange, and again, really far away, like really far away
Watch the
actually.
bees.
And so literally calling out, being like, I can see your pants, or like, because there were farmers around, and it was just like, quickly jump and then hide, and it was actually there's a person hidden in the bushes helping him in there somewhere.
Oh, wow.
My friend Molly, who may or may not come tonight, yeah, she's over there hiding somewhere in the bushes. But yeah, I think so. Those conversations can be really funny and weird, and like sometimes, especially a model who has never done it before, is just standing there being like, "Yep, I'm naked in front of a camera. This never happens." And look, reactions happen regardless of sexuality. I've been told when I shot a friend of mine who's a woman naked, she was very aroused by the shoot, and obviously I'm not giving off those vibes. So I think it's the nature of nudity and voyeurism and exhibitionism, and that even though there is nothing sexual about necessarily that situation, people being naked in front of other people and also being told how to move and what to do and how to look and the light and everything, it can just bring up manifest hilarious conversations, and sometimes very subtle and sometimes just hysterically laughing for 20 minutes and then moving on.
Look, it's not lost on me what it takes for someone to take their clothes off in front of another person, let alone a camera. And I always love the conversation that takes place with between my models and me during the photo shoot. Like it's really just us two. There's no team or anything, and I'm always fascinated by how someone sees themselves, whether they've feel confident enough to be doing this shoot in the first place because they spend all this time in the gym, or because doing so makes them feel confident, and I think that in turn makes me feel more confident about my body, or I go, oh well, maybe I'll try that, and then I feel a lot more comfortable with my own nudity, so I feel like their example or their confidence is enough to sort of trigger someone else's own confidence. But yeah, I don't always intend to sort of start a shoot with the intention that it's going to be nude, because half the time I'm saying, okay, what swimwear did you bring? And how colourful is it? Because then, whatever they bring, whether it's a yellow pair of underwear, I'm like, great, we'll shoot yellow. We'll sort of, add some pink in that, and then it'll just be this colour spectrum. But I say in my thing over there, all these models have had to tone themselves down in a way, and for them to step in front of a camera is a big coup for them, and I actually really love hearing that, and to the point where someone whose photos I've never released anywhere, they say, oh, I really love your style. I really just want some photos of myself to, record what I've done with my body for myself. And I'm like, I love that.
I've done that a lot.
Yeah.
A lot of older men, I get reached out to by very wealthy older men who they've been either working out or something, and they love what I do, but they don't want it to be published or publicized at all.
Yeah.
But it's for themselves, and it's like a recording, because I think when you're a baby, you get there's a period of time where especially queer people who aren't having things have changed, obviously. Obviously, I'm married, so that changed, but
you've got lots of wedding
lots of wedding, but I think before, a lot of, especially older men, where they feel like they've missed the chance to get married, or they don't want to get married because of what they've gone through. They don't have photos except for with their family members or something like that since they were at university, and back then they didn't have phones, they didn't have the ability to capture. So I think it's like a legacy or something. And this one guy I've shot a few times over the years, and I've never asked, but I'd say he's well in his 60s. He has the most ridiculous body I've ever seen. He doesn't want his face photographed, so it's just a pride thing of his body. He never wants me to photograph. He never wants me to show anything of it. But he's just very he's worked his ass off, and it's not for anyone but himself, which I respect. And I think that a lot goes into that. And it's quite interesting that because I think we're so obsessed with social media and putting ourselves out there and for some sort of purpose, and his purpose is just solely his own work ethic and what he's put himself through, and yeah, I think it's quite nice.
That brings me to another question, and the next question that I had written, so we're all very psychically connected at the moment. Social media. I think the three of us, it's important to the three of us because we're fairly prolific on social media. I would say you're fairly prolific, Jake. I've never really met you, but I sometimes feel like I know you and your husband Mitch because I've seen so many images. So I feel like I know you, but I don't know you at all, really. But social media, this isn't so much like a Pride or LGBT. It's not specific to that, but it's more specific to artists. You know, it is important to us, but how important do you think it is to you? Can you comment on the importance of social media and to your work?
So I think I will say it's greatly important. I think it's allowed me to have opportunities I wouldn't have had if it didn't exist. I've shown work around the world. I've photographed famous people. I've had some incredible opportunities because of social media, but I do think it's a double-edged sword. I think whilst it gives everyone a platform, it also gives everyone a platform to do the negative, and I've had friendships made because of social media. I've had friendships break because of social media. I've spent the last 2 years, thanks to COVID, working purely for social media, so I think it is one of those, it's like, don't bite the hand that feeds you, but it also kills you, so it's one of those it's so, I think it allowed queer people to have a voice. I think it allowed people of colour to have a voice. I think without social media, we would be all still stuck within our narrow framework of life. And I think it allowed us to find like-minded individuals, because I think 10 years ago, the only queer spaces were like nightclubs, so anyone under 18 had no ability to, maybe 20 years ago, they had no ability to connect with someone who was similar to them, and I think social media allowed for that. But then I think it also allowed for a lot of hate and a lot of vitriol, and we all went through the marriage equality debate, and that was fun to find out certain people in my circle weren't super supportive, I guess. But then at the same time, again, I owe my career, I think, to social media, and what I've had some ridiculous experiences where I stand there and I just go, this is all because of a post I did once that someone saw and got me this, and then meant this conversation that went to, and it's right, like those
100%.
like this. I think this whole exhibition, I'm sure you connected with most people from social media, and I got this because Kane followed me, and it was just this one, and I think it's all like Tetris, but then it can all collapse and rebuild.
But 100%, I feel like one job leads to the next with social media, but then, when you're considering what you're going to post to social media, you have to take into consideration, you can't show nudes, you have to, play their rules essentially, and I think why I started to exhibit with Gas in the first place is essentially because you turned around and you said, hey, I love your stuff too. Have you thought about ever putting it in an exhibition space? Yeah. And I think, that sounds great, because it just makes me so upset that people are only looking at a square on their smartphone, things take on a new life when they're on a wall or in another environment. It still, incites conversations with new and emerging artists as well. And I'm shooting for World Pride at the moment, and that job came out of Instagram because someone followed me and said, hey, you should do this, or, let me recommend you to this. And, it is sort of like a ripple effect, but also when Instagram sort of, say your post has been removed through sexual activity or insinuation, I'm like, what the fuck, really?
Yeah.
How is this smiling, colourful person,
yes,
sexualized.
Yeah,
and what's the filter that's doing that?
But when you see other sort of things on Instagram and you go, well, why isn't that censored? Then you have to sort of ask the question, or you have to weigh up whether it's something that you want to continue to do. or whether you want to explore other avenues, or whether you're ready to move on from social media. But I still scroll through my phone as much as anyone else, regardless. So.
Well, I was going to ask about the whole, if you've been, had posts rejected or blocked, or had you. It happened to me not that long ago, and I was like, what did I do?
Posting photos of this exhibition.
Yes.
I had got rejected 3 times.
Oh God! Well, I posted a post of this exhibition this week, and it's a video shot which starts here and goes around the room and sweeps past yours and goes down the stairs, right? And I'm like, okay, how do I do this? What do I do? And so I just put the address of the exhibition. As you pan past, the address of the exhibition comes up and it says 245 Victoria Street, and it's like, no more penis, and it's gone. But yes, you sort of live in fear a little bit of what Instagram. I'm talking directly about Instagram because I don't use anything else. But
There ends up being 2 versions of your artwork. Yeah. So there's the one where I'm glad you all get to see, but the ones that you put online, you go, oh well, yeah, I've got to censor that, which is fine. As you say before, things need to be appropriate. Unless you've got a private account, you shouldn't really be doing that. But I don't know. I'm pretty sure a lot of the people that follow me, well, see, then that's the other thing as well. Not everyone that follows me just wants to see, or is there to, they may only want to see me for this type of photography.
Yeah.
But I put some of my event photos on, my headshot photos. I put me on there. It's my life and my.
It's a personal account that
Yeah.
you have, even though it's got it's a blend. Yeah, so it covers a lot of things, and to me it's the social media thing. It's that corporate term of managing up. You feel like you have to manage up to social media to go, right, I know how they could react to this, so I'm going to pull back on it. And it's unfortunately it's a necessary evil because it does propel us forward, like Jake said, and certainly that's how I've been able to curate exhibitions. Like, I've met people that I didn't really know. It does open a doorway for positive things, but it can open a doorway for negative things as well.
I also do want to talk about so there's 2 parts to my artwork there. So the top artwork is, they're my photographs. I did the collage of it, but I was essentially inspired by the guy that did the collages underneath, who used my photographs. I send him all these high-res photographs, and I'm like, go do what you want with it. And then I see the resulting image, and I'm like, oh, far out, how's this? This guy lives in London, and I live in Sydney, and that model lives in New Zealand or Colombia, and you end up just totally amazed at this worldwide or global connection with people, and how their work can be inspired. You can inspire each other,
and Jake, well, collaborations was going to be my next question. How often do you do collaborations, or do you do them at all, or what's your experience with collaborations with other artists?
Yeah, okay. I think I would argue that every shoot is a collaboration, because I think especially a lot of the work, this particular type of work and the work in my book, is very much me and then the person I'm capturing, and I think that's a collaboration. But in that way, I haven't really that much, but I have once. So when I was shooting that work living in New York City, a friend of mine that I went to uni with, she studied art, painting. She's very talented painter. She was like, I love your work. I'm doing a piece on, she's a lesbian, but she did an entire exhibition called Man, and it was just different men. And she's like, I haven't seen men photographed the way you do it. Can I use some of them as inspiration? And I was like, yeah, go for it. And then when I got back to Sydney, I went to her exhibition, and half the exhibition was my work, but 10 times better than anything I could ever do.
Oh, wow.
She uses oils, spray paint, graffiti, and then gold leafing to create these portraits of men, and she's done lots of stuff now. But this exhibition, and it was 5 photos from my book are these beautiful, huge paintings with gold leafing, and it just gives a whole different intention. Not to mention that she's not a gay man, she's a gay woman, so her approach to my imagery of them, it's just so many different levels and layers, and it introduces all different things. And then she offered me, she would paint anything I asked her as a thank you, and she painted my dog as a present to my mother.
And what's certainly tell everyone her name so we can follow her. She's
Catherine. I don't know her Insta. Karen. Sorry, Karen. I think it's just Karen Paint, Caryn.
Okay.
But she's based in Melbourne and does the most incredible artwork. She's done murals there and she mixes media. And I just think with my next book, which will be this series as a book, I've started reaching out to other artists that do completely different forms of art. So I'd love more painters to interpret the work that they see, and then I can digitally print that into the book. And there are, similar to your collages, the friend who I collaborated with on the book did about 8 different collages of your different work that were more black and white, and they were very graphic images of like a man. And the cover is one. So that's
blended,
about the blended of like city and men and bodies and all this sort of stuff. And I love the idea of that, but not just digitally manipulated, but with painting or with a sculpture that I can photograph and then put it in there and play with that. So I might use some of the artists that you have shared here for that.
No, that sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
Whilst you've got the microphone, we're going to wrap up because we don't want to talk forever. Good final question. What is next? What's happening next for Jake?
What is next? So I'm going to work on this work more and I'll have an exhibition at the end of the year and then make it a book. And then I recently went back into freelance a couple of months ago. Apologies. That could be a job. No.
We want the phone to ring.
Just going back into editorial, I've just been doing work with this queer artist that's moving to an Australian in New York and doing all of his visuals. In 2 weeks I'm doing a high-end editorial for a professional dominatrix. Ooh. So I think it's fun to blend I find super queer or fetish or sexualized things, but then with high art, fashion, and playing with that. And I think that'll be my next sort of approach to work. So yeah.
That sounds very exciting.
Most people here know me, but the other half, catch me online.
I think of my work in terms of projects. I cover Eurovision, and so that's gearing up in the next 2 months. So that's where my mind is focused on. I usually sort of try and find some time to sort of do another shoot. I've got one in the can ready to sort of post after all of this Pride stuff, but I kind of want people to pay attention to it and not sort of get lost in all the posts that are out at the moment. I think I'll just continue to keep doing more things and getting more work, I think.
Yep.
I think
pay the bills, all that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. And you're both extremely, I don't need to tell you this because you know, but you're both extremely talented, and thank you so much for contributing work to this exhibition. They've certainly, their highlight works in this exhibition, of course, and have drawn lots of attention from our visitors. I'll just like to say to answer my own question about what I'm doing, but as I said at the top, this is a Group Art Show Sydney show, and we have another show coming up in 2 weeks' time. The next one will be in Newtown at Luna Studio, and it is called Myriad, and it has a myriad of artists and styles, so it lives up to its name. So yes, if you're in Newtown between the March 22 and 28, please hop in and see another group of fabulous artists. And there will be more shows from us coming up throughout the year.
And thanks for putting this on.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, of course, it's a pleasure. So that's it. Thank you.